The scripture this morning comes from the book of Alma, the 26th chapter. I'm going to start part of the way through verse 54. There was a group of Lamanites a few years before this occurred that were converted to the Lord. And as a result of their conversion experience, they laid down their weapons of war. And they beat their swords into plowshares, and they vowed and they made an oath that never again would they take up their weapons of war. And they came to live with the Nephites, and they were under the protection of the Nephites. And there was a lot of wars and battles that were going on. And this group of Lamanites who had made that oath were considering breaking that oath and taking up their weapons of war because they felt guilty that the Nephites were protecting them. But their sons said no. And 2,000 of their sons said they would fight instead. And they found themselves under the command of a man by the name of Helaman. And Helaman called them his sons. And they had gone to battle. And they were fleeing in front of a Lamanite army. And there was another Nephite army that was behind that Lamanite army trying to catch them. And eventually that army fell upon that group of Lamanites. And these men were not battle tested, these 2,000 young men. And they knew that there was this battle taking place behind them, and they were trying to decide whether they should go or not. And these are the words of those young men. Father, behold, our God is with us. And he will not suffer that we shall fall. Then let us go forth. We would not slay our brethren if they would let us alone. Therefore let us go, lest they should overpower the army of Antipas. Now they never had fought, yet they did not fear death. And they did think more upon the liberty of their fathers than they did upon their own lives. Yea, they had been taught by their mothers that if they did not doubt that God would deliver them. And they rehearsed unto me the words of their mothers, saying, we do not doubt that our mothers knew. Thank you for your music. A little over 20 years ago, my dad called one day, or not my dad, but somebody called, told us that he'd taken my mom to the hospital. It was kind of unusual because they didn't usually go to the hospital. So we knew something must be wrong, so we went to the hospital and visited with them, and they put my mom on some antibiotics and things and sent her home a few days later. And a little bit of time passed, and she was back in the hospital again, worse than she was before. They thought they knew what it was, and they did some surgery, and she didn't get any better. They decided that there was something wrong with her heart. So they transported her to a different hospital where they could do open heart surgery on her. They decided there was something wrong with the valves in her heart. And the doctor told my dad that there was 0% chance of her living if they didn't do the surgery. If they did the surgery, there was a very small chance that she would survive. So he decided to have the surgery done. And I remember going to the hospital that night thinking, she's going to be all right. And several hours of surgery later, the doctor came out. And he told my dad how well the surgery had gone. In fact, he said it went really well, and that he thought she would make a recovery. And there was some time that passed, and she was in ICU, and she was on a ventilator. She was heavily sedated. She didn't know if you were there or not. And all I could think about is never had a remembrance of ever telling her that I loved her or that she was special to me. I remember growing up, there were 4 of us children, and then one was added later, and my mom was a homemaker. She worked in the home, taking care of a bunch of kids. I don't know how she did it. 3 drove me crazy, and I wasn't there all day long with them every day. And I regretted that. And I wondered, will I ever have that opportunity to express my gratitude? We came to church on Mother's Day. And afterwards, my wife and I went up to the hospital to see my mom. I really didn't know why we were going because she's on a ventilator. She won't know what's going on or anything. When we got there, we found out they'd taken her off the ventilator, and she was breathing on her own. So on Mother's Day of that year, for the first time, I could tell my mom that I loved her. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity that I had. And I suppose that if I wouldn't have had that opportunity, I would have carried that burden with me my whole life. My mom was always the one that took care of us when we were sick. When I came in with frostbite, she's the one that rubbed my cheeks and my ears and my hands and my toes. She was the one that told me at 18 years old, when I had been ordained to the priesthood, to the office of priest, that God did not call me for what I was. that he called me for what I could become. And I have never, ever forgotten that. I never heard my mom stand in prayer service and bear a testimony. I've never heard my mom offer a prayer in public. But yet the impact she had on my life was profound. And I am eternally grateful for that. There are other people in our lives that impact us that are motherly. And for a time, I worked for my uncle. And I lived with my cousin. And my Aunt Myrtle used to come get my clothes and wash them. I didn't ask her to do it. I didn't want her to do it, but she did it. And whenever I get my laundry back, they were all folded nice and neat. The holes in my jeans were patched. The holes in my socks were patched. And I know she did it out of love. And I'm grateful for that. And there are many others that have had an impact in our lives and are constantly praying for us. And if not for the prayers of those mothers, where would we be? There'd be no hope, would there? A mother's love. If only we men could understand that. If only we could grasp what that means. Then maybe we could be better. Maybe we could be better husbands. Maybe we could be better fathers. Maybe we could be better people. Maybe we could be better ministers if we only understood a glimpse of that love that a mother has. I read to you about a group of young men who were profoundly influenced by their mothers. And war is never a good thing. Yet they took up the battle to protect their own. Make a long story short, they were victorious in this battle. And now it came to pass that when they had surrendered themselves up unto us, behold, I numbered those young men who had fought with me, fearing lest there were many of them slain. But behold, to my great joy, there had not one soul of them fallen to the earth. Yea, and they had fought as with the strength of God. Ye never were men known to have fought with such miraculous strength, and with such mighty power did they fall upon the Lamanites, that they did frighten them. And for this cause did the Lamanites deliver themselves up as prisoners of war. They had such great faith and such belief in those words that had been taught to them that they went out and they executed those in action, knowing that God would be with them. Now, we may not have to go out and do a physical battle, but there are battles going on all the time in this world. And preaching the gospel and talking about Jesus Christ is a battle because there are so many forces that are opposed to us. What do you think made the church so successful in the early years? What do you think made the Book of Mormon so profound that everybody that read it was believing it? What did they have different than what we have? They had a power and a faith that is unlike what we have because they believed every word. They believed that God would go before them, and He did go before them. And when they preached the gospel, it was with power and authority from on high. It was not just words that they were reading. They believed it with every fiber of their being. And that is what we must do today. We must have a great spiritual awakening and quit being lulled to sleep by everything around us. Nothing that is worthwhile is easy. Are there any athletes in here that have ever trained for something to be successful? If you don't put in the time, what happens when you go to compete? You're just not quite on your game, are you? But if you practice and you practice and you practice and you condition yourself and you know all the rules and you know what to expect, when you go to that competition, you're prepared and you're successful. When you preach the gospel, when you teach the gospel, when you share with everybody you come in contact with, it has to be in here. You have to be prepared in here. It has to be in your heart. You have to know what you're doing. You have to love what you're doing. You know, countless times we've been told to study to show yourself approved. And it's not talking about, at a moment's notice, being able to whip out your iPad or your iPhone and pull up a scripture. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about picking up those scriptures and reading them and then becoming alive to you. One of the things I always appreciated every time I would talk to June, she always said, "I'm praying for you." And I knew that she meant it. I knew that she was doing it. And I knew that it was out of love that she was doing that. Because she knew if she didn't pray for me, I was hopeless. It's never going to work out, was it? This group of 2,000 young men were joined by 60 other of their brethren. So they're now 2,060. And as the remainder of our army were about to give way before the Lamanites, behold, those 2,060 were firm and undaunted. Yea, and they did obey and observe to perform every word of command with exactness. Yea, and even according to their faith, it was done unto them. And I did remember the words which they said unto me that their mothers had taught them. And it came to pass, this is after the battle was over, the next battle, there were 200 out of my 2,060 who had fainted because of the loss of blood. Nevertheless, according to the goodness of God, and to our great astonishment, and also to the joy of our whole army, there was not one soul of them who did perish. Yea, and neither was there one soul among them who had not received many wounds. And now their preservation was astonishing to our whole army. Yea, that they should be spared while there was 1,000 of our brethren who were slain. And we do justly ascribe it to the miraculous power of God because of their exceeding faith in that which they had been taught to believe, that there was a just God, whomsoever did not doubt that they should be preserved by his marvelous power. Now this was the faith of these whom I have spoken. They are young and their minds are firm, and they do put their trust in God continually, because that is what they were taught by their mothers. In every aspect of our life, in everything we come in contact with every day, if we could remember that and put our trust in God, we would be victorious in everything, would we not? I was a young boy. My dad built a little bridge. We had a creek between the house and the barn. When it would rain, couldn't get across the creek. Had to go way down to the neighbor's lane to cross on a bridge to get to the barn, which is not that far from the house. So he built this bridge. And a couple of my brothers and I were playing on the bridge. Steve and his twin. We're throwing dirt, and I'm walking through the dirt. You know, it's dust in the air. It was fun, right? Well, I got some dirt in my eyes, so I had the smart idea, well, I'm just going to close my eyes so I don't get dirt in my eyes. There was no railing on the bridge. There was an old stove in the creek bed, covered in mud and stuff. I walked right off the edge of that bridge. And it was probably up about 6 or 7 feet, something like that. And I landed in the mud right next to that stove. I don't know how I missed it. My dad was out in the field somewhere doing something. It was my mom that came and got me. It was my mom that helped wash the filth and the dirt off of me, gave me some clean clothes to put on, comforted me, because I was a little shook up. When we think of our mothers and that love that they have for us, let us remember all that they have done for us. Let us remember how well off we are because of their love. And maybe it wasn't your physical mother. Maybe it was someone else who gave you that love. Not only did I receive love from my mother and other women in the church, but from aunts, from my grandmother. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that the Lord has given to us mothers, and that we have had the opportunity in our lives to share a little glimpse of that and know that we're better off because of that love that the mothers bring to our lives, because of that guidance that they give us, because of that gentle comfort they give us. I never heard my grandma yell at anybody. My grandma Cora. I heard the other one yell a few times. And when she talked to you, it was always so peaceable. She never raised her voice. Even if she was ridiculing you for something, you wouldn't even know it till later. That's the gentle spirit she had with her. And I'm so grateful for that influence in my life. Someday, maybe us men will understand a little better what that love is. But on this day, let's remember that kindness and that joy and that comfort and that all that our mothers mean to us. Let's remember that and be eternally grateful for that, because that has made us who we are.